I'm Michael Knowles, here to tell you that Rules for Retrogrades, the book and the show, are out now, and you absolutely need to check it out before the thought police confiscate all of it and lock you away.
Rules for Retrogrades out today. Counter disruption. We're disrupting the plans of the radicals. Everyone pick up a copy if you don't already have one. And if you do have one, please leave a review in all the relevant places so that we get it into the hands of all the people that need it. Rules for Retrogrades. Rise.
Fellow retrogrades, before we begin today's show on suffering, please take time and say Hail Mary for Samantha Bannister's parents and siblings as they near what would have been her 16th birthday in a couple days from today. This is an especially difficult time for their family, as you can imagine. Also, please say an Our Father for the repose of Samantha's soul. Jeremiah is still looking for a publisher for his book, She Danced Me a Story, chronicling his daughter's battle and death of childhood brain cancer. Thank you.
Welcome, parish orphans and retrogrades, COVID shut-ins, to a special edition of Rules for Retrogrades today. Dave is in transit moving states, and yet here I sit with a very special guest, my friend, Mr. Jeremiah Bannister. I wanted to bring on Jeremiah today because he's a great narrator, a great storyteller, raconteur type, and he has a work in progress that I wanted to talk to him about. His daughter, Sami, who passed away, is the subject of the story, and it's a great one. First, let me introduce you to Mr. Bannister, who is a writer, a YouTuber, a public speaker. After serving in the U.S. Navy, he earned a degree in journalism and mass communication with a minor in political science, during which time he was awarded the school's top honor in creative writing, political science, and public speaking. You can see when he tells a story, narrates very well. Since then, he has hosted a local TV show, served as a contributing editor for the Distributist Review, and hosted a live AM/FM talk radio program. He's also presented before a number of collegiate audiences. He and his family attend the traditional Latin Mass at Sacred Heart of Jesus in Grand Rapids, Michigan, where he's a native. His children are also enrolled in that parish's classical education school, Sacred Heart Academy, which is a very excellent school, I hear. He's currently completing a novel about the real-life fairy tale of his daughter Sami's life and death with childhood brain cancer, and how her heroic tragedy led him and his family back to the Catholic Church. Jeremiah, what's up, brother? How are you?
What's up, my man? I'm doing good.
Yeah, I'm honored to have you on today, and when you speak, I noticed this when we did some stuff together for Meaning of Cath. You know, you're a great storyteller, and you're still writing the story, which is she danced me a fairy tale, right?
She danced me a story.
She danced me a story. Sorry.
Yeah. No.
And that's a working title, so maybe you'll like my title better, right?
Yeah.
No, She Danced Me a Story. You're working on it. You're nearly done, and I wanted to talk to you about it today. When my eldest daughter, Abigail, was in the hospital, and before she was in the hospital, people really connected with the aspect of the theology of suffering presented by childhood hospitals. And I just thought, man, Abby's nearly 12. She's been in and out of hospitals for her whole life. And I know a little something about it, but the area of the hospital, my brother, that I'm always afraid to go to is the cancer ward. It gives me panic attacks even to walk near that part of the hospital where there will be kids with cancer, because it's like you're near the pinnacle of the suffering mountain in childhood hospitals, children's hospitals, and you just see the pinnacle is the cancer ward. So when I heard your story, I wanted to bring you on. You tell us about the story even before it's finished, and it's still looking for a publisher, by the way, publishers out there. So please, man, I'm honored to have you tell us about She Danced Me a Story.
Well, first of all, man, I totally relate to the idea of the fear and the nightmare that's involved with even the thought of childhood cancer, and especially childhood brain cancer. I mean, all cancers are wicked bad, right? But brain cancer, it affects so much because it's the brain, right? And so, I remember early on when we found ourselves at the hospital, and we'll talk about this, of course, but being at the hospital and seeing this sign, and it's a night that I'll never forget because my daughter had just got an MRI, and she's sleeping. We were all kind of scared, uncertain. We didn't know what it was, and brain cancer was not even remotely close to what I was thinking. Right? I was thinking of a whole host of different possibilities. And I knew it was the mind. I knew it was the brain. But I didn't know, I would have never imagined that. But I saw a sign at Helen DeVos Children's Hospital, right?
Yeah.
And Helen DeVos Children's Hospital, amazing place in Grand Rapids, one of the best in the country, in fact. And there was a sign, and it said, I had this cute little kid, and he's kind of got his hands clasped together. And it says that the hospital is rated by U.S. News and World Report in the top 25 hospitals in the country in 3 different regions or 3 different specialties. And one of those was cancer. And when I saw that image, it was so conflicting because the kid looks so happy. Right? It's this charming, cute, little adorable guy, almost like a Gerber kid, but add 3 or 4 years to him. And beautiful little kid. And he's so happy. But that word, cancer, just sent a chill up my spine. Right. And I remember thinking how grateful the families in our town must be to have a hospital like that, and that I couldn't imagine. That's what I told myself. I can't even imagine how terrible that would be. And I took a picture, and it was dark. Everybody's gone for the evening, and kind of in a dark lobby by myself. And I take this very lonely picture of this poster, and I shared it on Facebook, just saying how grateful we are to have a place like this. And that was, I think, about 11 o'clock at night, maybe close to midnight. And 7 hours later, we were shown the images that showed that she had a tumor in the back of her brain. Okay. And so, but yes, the story follows our family and begins just kind of the regular life that we had. I was a DJ at the time, and I was an atheist at the time. In fact, I'd been an apostate for, at that point, about 5 years, and very active even in the atheist community. I eventually became a board member of Center for Inquiry, Michigan. But I was working on weekends at a roller rink because my children loved to roller skate. And if I was a DJ there, then they could roller skate for free. Right? So I said, well, I'll do special parties and certain events and stuff. So it begins kind of in the daily life, the normal life that we lived, and with her love for skating and watching movies and doing this thing called pillow blankets, which is our oldest family tradition, where she when she was young, she would sneak out of her crib and walk into the room where I was. I'd lay down at night, when we're shutting everything down, and I'd watch old vintage episodes of Super Friends. And I don't know if you remember that show.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I think we have like all 9 seasons now. You can buy them on Amazon. But I would watch Super Friends to go to sleep, and I'd be laying on the couch and whatnot, And she came out all the time, and she'd crawl up on my chest and just lay there with me. And my wife was always, you can't. This is a bad habit. you can't let her do this. Well, one time she crawls out and she walks up to me, and she's got this tiny little pillow, man, for like a stuffed animal or something. It's it's a prop basically. And she's got this tiny itsy blanket that had been knitted for her. And she walks up to me, and she'd only recently begun to speak, so she knew very few words. And I looked at her, and she raised those little things up in the air, and she goes, "Pillow blankets, Papa," like that. And it just melted my heart. And I said, of course, my chest and stuff. Well, that developed into a tradition where our family would get tons of blankets together, and we watch vintage cartoons, or we watch, kind of fun things, Doctor Who or whatever. And we fall asleep laying on just mounds, like a castle, a fortress of pillows and blankets. And so it talks about that and how we learned that she had cancer, because, and this plays into the fear, man, like you were talking about, that it came on in a way that we would have never imagined. And that's how the story begins. And so,
yeah, it's almost like you almost think that you're inoculated against such a surprise horror by, I don't know, commenting on it, like the little picture you took or whatever, like, oh man, those, yeah, not in like a mean way, but in a compassionate way, or a close to a compassionate way, because at that point you couldn't understand what it would be like to have a kid with cancer. But you're like, those parents, man, good for them that they have this great hospital here. And man, that's man, I'll pray for them, right? And then 7 or 8 hours later, you find out you're one of them. That's one of, I've never heard one of these cancer reveal stories that aren't really touching in some way. Usually they're touching in a frightening way to me, who still has this hypochondriacal center in my brain. I mean, the funny thing is, so my daughter is a brain patient, has had several big brain surgeries, and right now she has her head shaved, right? But so we go on walks. We go to the marketplace and get a Jamba Juice. People see my daughter, they absolutely probably think has brain cancer or had it.
Right.
But it's like, it makes me feel like a fraud. It's like, no, I'm not walking. I mean, it's a hard life in a lot of ways, that Abby had particularly young in her life, but she's blessed to be healthy, nothing. I feel like a fraud. So I hear your story and I'm just like, geez, was she always healthy? Did she,
Yes.
Yeah, she's perfectly healthy. Is there cancer in the family? Or how do you deal
None.
with this? How do you give meaning to it? There's no cancer in the family.
Well, there's no way to find out either about it. Like and it's kind of weird with hindsight, right? You can look back, and now when talking about it, you can tell certain symptoms. Like she started having headaches really badly, and we'd give her Tylenol. Oh, my head hurts. So I'd give her Tylenol, and it was always mild though. It wasn't extreme, but it was just kind of nagging. And we thought she needed glasses, so we brought her in to the optometrist, and he's checked. He kind of was looking at her funny, and then he flashed his light in her eye, and then did it again, and looked at her funny, and did it again. Did it like 3 or 4 times, and he looked up at us, and he goes, "Well, her pupil's not dilating on one eye," and he says, "But there's no nerve damage, so I don't really know why that's not happening. But it was her right eye." And then we go to the skating rink the next day, and we're skating and stuff. And I noticed as she was skating that it was a little bit different. She had a really great stride. She was really good at skating and really athletic, a cheerleader, all sorts of stuff. She loved running outside and playing all the time. But there was something different about her, and even her arm. And she had her arm kind of up and to the side, and her hand was kinked in a weird way as she turned the corner. And I'm up at the DJ booth, so I get a whole view of this. And it reminded me of a baby bird, that we had these birds in a nest outside our front door in an old home that we had. And one day, I don't know if it was chipmunks or squirrels or what, but they had gotten the baby birds. And so I came home one day, and there's these birds on the ground that had died. And we did a funeral and everything for them. But there was one of the birds, man, its wing was broken. And the way that its wing was postured on the ground, it was so heartbreaking to see this. They barely had any feathers developed. There was still like skin and everything.
Yeah.
But so when I saw my daughter, it reminded me of this broken wing a little bit. It was just bizarre. She never put her arm up like that, and almost like a balancing act, like a tightrope walker. And so I'm watching. Well, she gets in a race at the end, and she's going around. She's just smoking everybody, man. I mean, she's way ahead in this race. We got the music bumping and stuff, and she slips and falls. And it was an awkward looking fall. And it looked like her leg, just something wasn't right about her leg. And she fell. And then she tried to get back up, and she fell again. And at that point, I was worried. It didn't look natural. It didn't, I've seen her fall.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This was something different. And she looked at me, and her eyes, her face, I'll never forget it. But her face, she said, "Papa," really loudly. And I started to run to get down to the rink, and she grit her teeth, and she stood back up, and people are going by her, and she gets back up, and she skates, and she didn't win. She got second place, barely behind the dude that won. He actually congratulated her afterward. He's like, "I can't believe it." And I asked her what was wrong, and she said nothing, but she bruised herself badly from that. But then she told me it didn't hurt, but it was big. I mean, it was a big bruise, and it didn't hurt at all. And that night she came upstairs in my office. I used to record my AM/FM radio show, a talk radio show, and we recorded pre-production stuff upstairs in our attic studio. I have 2 different studios in the house. And she was up there talking with me, and she told me that I'd be so proud of her. And I said, well, why? And she goes, I can write with my left hand. And I said, oh, wow. I said, show me. So she goes and I have a collection of diaries and stuff and notebooks. She grabs her favorite pen, fountain pen, grabs her favorite notebook out, and she's writing. And it's amazing. Now you can tell she's pretty focused on it, but it was super legible. I mean, maybe even better than my handwriting right-handed. I got pretty good handwriting, you know. And she said that, you know, that she could write in cursive. And so I had her show me in cursive. And then it hit me. And I'm thinking, you know, why are you doing that? I mean, it's amazing you can do that. It's an awesome skill. But what's the reason for you doing that? And she said, her face, you know, kind of, the demeanor went down. And she said, well, I can't really write with my right hand anymore. And I mean, you just got to imagine yourself in that situation.
Yeah.
Looking at a daughter who is an artist and amazing handwriting, and she's telling it, and I there's a nervous chuckle of disbelief. And I said, what do you mean you can't write with your right hand anymore? And she got even sadder and said, I can't write with my right hand. And I said, you know, that's impossible. And she said, well, my teacher was complaining that my handwriting was getting really sloppy. And so I tried harder, but it wasn't working. And so I tried to go slower. He told me to slow down on my work. She was always a straight A student, teacher's pet, in fact. And she slowed down, but she said I wasn't able to get my homework done, and he was still saying it was sloppy. She said, so I decided to write with my left hand, and now I get my homework done on time. And she was happy again. Right? Like
How long? How long did the process of her right handwriting degrading?
About a week. About a week. But she didn't say anything to us, not to Mama, not to me. And the teacher just thought she was just speeding through her work, that was it. He didn't know any better. And so I get upset. You know, I'm visibly upset at this point. And I said, show me. I'm scrambling for the pen and the paper. And I slam it in front of her. And I said, you show me. I said, I want to see you write with your right hand.
Right.
And so she takes it and she's writing. And it was chicken scratches, bro. Totally nothing. I mean, it was just doodling. And I get so mad. I pull out my wallet and I open it up. And I had a letter. I still have this letter. I'm going to frame it. And it's a letter where she told me she believes in me and that she loves me and trusts me and that she knows that I'll do something great one day. And I've carried that with me for like 2 years. And I slammed it down and I said, that is your handwriting. I'm pressing my finger on it, mad. And I said, you show me right now your handwriting. Show me.
Yeah.
And she grabs the pen, but she can't grab it with her hand. And so she takes her other hand and places the pen in her fingers. And she starts writing, and you can tell she's trying so hard. And she starts to cry. And the pen falls out of her fingers, and she looks at me and scrambles to try to grab it. And I look at it, and then it hit me. And I thought, right eye, right leg, right arm, right hand, left brain. I knew it.
Right.
It's like seeing a constellation of terrible things. And even then, I still didn't think cancer. We immediately went right away to get checked out. And the doctor who saw her had her do tests and had her flip over her hands. And she couldn't. She was trying really hard. And she had to use her body to flip her hand over. And as soon as that happened, that doctor's face, I mean, she was very scared. And she left the room, came back and said, MRI right now. Don't go anywhere else. You go straight there. And we went and we found out that she had brain cancer.
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy. I mean, so it was all over the course of like a week, this degradation of motor skills and all. And it's
not only that, I'll say one more thing about it, man, is that she ended up getting sick. Right. And so the headaches started before. The headaches were a little bit before that. And Tylenol and stuff would help a little bit over time. So we just kind of chalked it up as that. And then she did puke. Right. That was something that happened. She puked. The thing is, I was puking too. I got sick. Right? I had the flu. So we would lay in bed next to each other because we were both sick. So it was like, Papa and daughter watching TV and being sick in the same bed. But I got better and she didn't.
How often would she throw up?
Yeah, so she was throwing up, and she'd get really scared. It was like so sudden, and it was a different kind of thing. And so looking in hindsight, in real time, you can see headache. Well, maybe it's glasses. Puking. Well, I'm puking too. Fell down at the skating rink. That happens.
Right.
But that hand was it. And now looking back, it's easy to beat yourself up and say, I wish I would have known. I wish I could have put those pieces together. But yeah, that's how it happened.
But how much time would it have bought you? A couple weeks? I mean, like what? It's not like you were missing symptoms for a year. This is the scary part.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, in fact, they don't know when it began. And that is where it's scary, is because, since she's died, there's a terrible thing that happens when children die. And I guess when any loved one dies, is that their stuff is in the home. And you have to make a choice on what to do with that stuff. And I'm going to be very forthright and say I have read every one of her journals. I've read every word. And there were letters from like a year before this that she talked about headaches, and she talked about not feeling good. But she didn't express that to us, or if she did, we gave her Tylenol and then she didn't come back. It was never recurring. But it makes you wonder, how far back does this go? And about the week, when people say, does a week help? In the beginning, when we were at the hospital, within 1 week, she went from walking in with a little bit of a limp to being completely paralyzed, and I had to carry her to the bathroom. They wanted to put diapers on her. And she cried and she begged me, please don't let them do this. And I yelled at the nurses and said, get out. And I said, I will carry my princess to the bathroom.
Yeah.
We're not going to do this to her. It's so demeaning. And so every time she had to go, man, we're picking her up and carrying because she couldn't walk anymore. And then within another day, it looks like she has a stroke. And then another day, her shoulder is up against her ear. And that was on my birthday. She actually woke me up in the morning. It was like 5 a.m, and I hear these whispers. I'm laying on the couch in the room, and I look up, and she's whispering with the nurse, and they look at me. They both kind of turn their heads and look, almost like a movie. And you look at them, and they stop. Like deer in headlights. Like they're so busted, but And I fell back asleep, and then I heard this crinkle crinkle noise, and I wake up, and it's them again, and there's a paper bag, and then my daughter wakes me up about 5 minutes later. I go back to sleep again. She wakes me up, and she goes, Papa, I need help. And man, I was up, boom, super fast. I booked to the bed, and I'm all scared. And she goes, I need help with this paper bag. And I'm like, what? And so, it freaked me out. But she had a donut in there for me. And she said, I wanted to say happy birthday to you. And it was dark in that room, but I looked over at her, and I realized that her shoulder was pressed really hard up against the side of her face. And it was spasming. It would jerk and spasm. And it scared me, and I wanted to say something, but I thought, not now. She knows this is happening. She knows it.
Right.
But she doesn't want to talk about it. She wants to talk about my birthday.
Right.
And so, that was 1 week. And when we finally helped her, I'm advocating, and I pushed her forward. One time, all these nurses are in there trying to figure out what's going on. And I push her forward, and I can see her back, and it's laid bare. The gown doesn't come away all the way around the back. And her spine, instead of going straight up and down, it was like a C. And it was grotesque. That's the only word I can say. It's unsettling to see. And I was like traumatized seeing this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how did this happen? 1 week. And in the end, well, I won't skip ahead, but in the end of the story, there's another thing that if we had 1 week, what I would not give for 1 week, because I believe it would have made all the difference in the world. So it sounds like it's not a big deal. And I like to tell myself that it would be the same. But there's part of me in my heart that says, boy, I'd give anything in the world just for that 1 week extra notice.
Yeah. So how long was it from that point until she died?
16 months.
Oh, 16 months. So she descended fast and then stayed at a incapacitated state or nearly incapacitated for 16 months? Or
no, it was they went in, they did it, they had to do a biopsy, and the biopsy was like 6 hours long, the surgery, and they found out that it's an anaplastic astrocytoma. And basically what that is our brains, God made us in a really cool way to where our brains have this kind of supercharged protective shield of cells that bind together, and a lot of energy bursting through there, and that helps so this stuff doesn't pass certain brain barriers. And the cell shape is in the shape of a star, so that energy is coming from the center of the star, right? And I can just imagine how beautiful, if you got, I can just imagine, right? And so the thing is that's your protective shield for your brain, right? These cells.
Yeah. Those
cells were the cancer. And so the shield becomes the sword, and you don't have any protection from it. And it was in the back of her brain by her spine. So the fluid in those cavernous areas wasn't able to go through, which is why it's paralyzed one side of her body, right? And they said she wouldn't walk again. She did walk again. They said she would never skate again. I've got a video that I really encourage people to find. They can find that at my YouTube channel at Paleocrat. And that video it tells the story of her skating again and me running by her side, holding her arm as she did it. We had to buy special skates for it. There were 3 wheels on it, and it was really low to the ground, like a low rider, for stability. And I had to hold her because if she fell, she fell one time at school as she got bumped and knocked over by a student who felt very badly about it and used to be a bully, in fact, to her, and later became kind of a champion, but knocked her over on accident, and she ended up fracturing her arm and had to wear a cast because chemo makes your bones brittle. But she went through ridiculous amounts of therapy. She was on all sorts of treatment. In fact, she was on a whole host of crazy medications for a long time, all sorts of opiates and benzos and everything else. And to be straightforward, to be very frank, I live in Michigan, and it's a medical marijuana state. Yeah. And I made that decision to do that. And she went from being on like 6 different controlled substances to 1. And it was life-changing, even her attitude on it. But we had long conversations about it, and it was very secretive. In fact, I didn't talk about it ever. I was very private about it.
Yeah.
And so, because I knew it was a little bit controversial, especially as a kid, I didn't, but that's what we did. And we talked to doctors, of course, to do that, and got her medical card.
Yeah.
But so she went through all these therapies and got better. And in fact, went through radiation. We have pictures of that. Went through radiation, and it was about the size of a golf ball. They got it down to about 30% of its size through a 17-hour brain surgery. She was actually under for 24, but in the surgery for 17. And so it got down to 30%, which gave her a lot of mobility back. Again, she was able to walk, didn't like using her wheelchair very much anymore. Still could never write right-handed. She all of her drawings that she did after that and her writing is all left-handed. But when she went to radiation, we got this news, and they wanted us to come in, and we went in, and the doctor was really excited and showed us the results, and it was gone, and not, at least not visible to the MRI. And I actually asked, as an atheist, I pulled the doctor aside and I asked if it was a miracle. I said, I wanted to know, and I said, is this a miracle? And she said, no. She said, this is, she couldn't say either way, obviously, but she said that this kind of cancer is very receptive. It can be, but sometimes it's not. And because it was receptive and it melted it, that's a good sign for potential in the future. And for the next year, she lived an awesome life, traveling to New York, saw Ivanka Trump, actually saw Donald Trump, right? Waved to him.
Oh, wow.
And everything. We were up against the gates. We have a picture with Ivanka, and a cute story where she looked up at Ivanka and said, she said, you're really tall. And she looked at her and she goes, I cheat a little bit. And she showed her heels, kind of flashed her heels at her. It's a real cute thing. Good picture too. But went to Wales, Cardiff, Wales, to the Doctor Who Museum. She was the ambassador of the year for Make-A-Wish in Michigan. So they highlighted her. It was this amazing thing. And she went to London, so we got to see the Sherlock Holmes Museum and stuff. And so we did a whole bunch of things. She was active.
Did you think she was cancer free for this time, or what? I mean, I know it's within 5 years or whatever, so the protocols say don't celebrate too much. What's the status?
The status is that the overwhelming majority of people. I think it's like 80% of the kids who get this will die within 5 years. So we already knew, and that and over 90% will die within 10. Like, I mean, it's like, so we knew that the possibility of her living for 5 years was small. Okay, so we had to buckle in for this, and we had to be realistic. That was actually my promise to her. She said, I need you to promise me that you're going to tell me the truth always, and that you will never hide things from me, because this is my life. And I promised her scientific honesty. I said, if it's a potential, it's a potential. And I was really strict about it. So we didn't get our hopes up too much, but other people did. And we tried to make them know that, yes, it's not present, but recurrence on average is 2.5 years.
Right.
And it almost always recurs. And so,
Right.
and then it almost always wipes them out. But there were people who they saw that and got their hopes up. We have a video called "Where'd the Cancer Go?" or something like that. And people watched that and walked away from it very confused when it did come back. And it came back with a fury very fast. And I think it's actually gracious. I think God was gracious to us about it. But because it could have gone a long time, but it didn't. But yeah, people thought that it was just gone and that was just the end and no more chemo for you. And it's like, no, we have chemo videos too called Chemo Day, where people can see the process of that and what she had to go through. And she wanted to record that for people. She wanted them to know.
Damn. So we'll link all the videos you want, especially the roller skating one, to this video. So can you talk about the scientific honesty, and then I want to talk a little theology of suffering with you for the next 15 minutes or whatever. But first, just tell me the scientific honesty with a 12, 13-year-old. 13, 14-year-old. Sorry, Sami was how old?
She was 10 years old when she was diagnosed, almost 11, and she died when she was 12, and she'll be 16 on May 22nd of this year.
Let's go almost to the day. That's crazy. Yeah, we were gonna. Yep. So that scientific honesty that kills me, because I mean I do the same thing. I don't lie to my kids, and if you have a bright kid, which sounds like you do, especially then you're not gonna fib to them or fudge on this. So that had to kill you, man. I mean, how'd you do that?
She made it easy. She was super smart. She loved science as it was, but when we found out, the doctors wanted to tell her.
Yeah.
And the doctors, they said, look, we've dealt with this for a long time. We can tell her. And they were supposed to come in that day, and they didn't, and said they'd be back the next day. But that was like a Friday. So Saturday, I'm like, I didn't even process, well, they're not even going to be here. And they didn't come on Saturday. So I called on Sunday, and they said, well, the doctors are actually gone. They're on spring break. And I'm thinking, and so they got back with me and said, well, we'll just tell her after the autopsy. And I said, in your dreams, no, you're not going in her brain, a brain surgery, without telling. And let me say this: the doctors are great. To this day, we consider them friends. They're like family to us. These people.
Yeah.
She had the same doctors the whole way through. The thing is, though, is that I ended up being the one to tell her, because my wife, she just couldn't. I mean, we walked to the door together to do it, and she broke down crying. And she said, I'm so sorry, I can't do this. And so I walked in that room by myself, and I sat on the edge of that bed, and I told my daughter that you have brain cancer. My daughter, Samantha, did not cry. She was obviously scared and not fully aware of what that meant, but she knew about death. And she asked me, am I going to die? And I said, we're going to try our best to not let that happen. And she said, but can I die from it? And I said, it is trying to kill you.
Yeah.
And she said,
good answer.
She said, then you promise me that the hard stuff, especially the hard stuff, that you tell me. And so we talked.
Yeah.
I broke it down as best I could to say, she had a lot of questions. And the thing is, through it all, it was extremely painful. I mean, there were times, and we had the rule for all the kids, and our kids have been through terrible things. They've seen death. She died in our home. We've got a picture, dude. It's painfully beautiful, or beautifully painful. And it is when she died. And we're all around the bed. She was in the quiet zone, which is where our books are and where we pray and meditate now. And we've dedicated that room. In fact, there's a little note on the door. It's a big piece of paper that says "Quiet Zone, please, please be silent" or whatever.
Yeah.
We've left that on the door. It's there to this day. And so she died in there. And actually, I would love one day if somebody would paint that. I think it's just a beautiful picture. But the thing is that, talking to them about these matters and being honest about it and what's ahead and how could this affect us and how is it going to affect Samantha, and having to be forthright with her. But she made it easy. And not every kid would be like this. Not every situation is the same, right? Just like cancer's not cancer. There's all different kinds. I learned a lot, man.
Yeah.
But the thing is that she made it easy for two reasons. Number one, she said, "I know you don't know a lot about cancer, but anything, because I said I wanted to help." And she said, "Then do what you do best."
Yeah.
And so I shared stories. I wrote stories. I kept people up to date. I made videos promoting it, did fundraising stuff so we could travel and she could see different parts of the world even. But what made it the easiest, and this is stunning, is that she never said, "Why me?" Not one time, man. And that's the craziest junk in the world, because I would be saying from first thought, man, I'm 42 years old. I'd still say, "Why me, Lord?" Shaking my fist at the heavens and stuff. But here's this girl, and not one time in 14 months, not once did she say, "Why is this happening to me?" And I remember the day she died, man. I carried her body out of the house, and there's a video of that only select people have ever seen. And I needed it because I wouldn't believe it's real. And the thing is that when it was over, I go upstairs to the attic where we had our pillow blankets together. And I go up there and I'm just thrashing around. My co-host was up there with me and I was traumatized. And I was looking at him and I said, "She's dead, bro." And he goes, and he's bawling. He's like, "Bro, I know." And I saw the video. I said, "I need to see it." And I saw the video and I kicked him. I said, "You got to go, bro. Go now." And I'm yelling at him and he's like, "Bro, I love you. I'm so sorry." And he left. He's a good guy. And he leaves and I'm thrashing around on the floor and I'm laughing and I'm crying. There's actually an audio that if I ever make a CD, because I play guitar and I sing, if I ever did, I would include this song, because I picked up my guitar. I didn't know what to do. And I picked up my guitar and I pushed record on the voice recorder and I said, "My daughter died today." And then I started playing from my heart. And I messed up at the end. I was passionate and just emotions flying through the strings. And I started laughing and then crying and then laughing and then crying. And I just wept and I forgot that I was recording. I won't delete that. But when I realized that, I pushed end and I fell down on the ground and I cried out, "Why?" And I looked up and there is the picture of our family with her in the middle, the day before her surgery. And I just laughed at myself. And I thought, here I am alive, obviously at a terrible, tragic loss, but I'm here. And I'm screaming, "Why?" But she didn't. And that made it easy to deal with telling her the truth, because I was always reassured that she would take it in stride and she knew she could trust that I wouldn't lie to her, even about God, because that was a real thing. We were atheists. I was. And over time, I started even talking about that and about that maybe I was wrong and that I don't know the answers and that I want the answers and that everything inside of me screams to see her again. And so that's scientific honesty.
Yeah. So This brought you back to the faith. Were you a cradle Catholic?
No.
No, you weren't a cradle Catholic, but you'd been in the church.
Mm-hmm.
Well, bounced around, and then so this brought you back to the church. How? I mean, this is powerful stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it started on a because I was raised Pentecostal. I became a Calvinist in Bible college. I started reading theology, and so I became a Calvinist. I was more interested in church history. Right, that was when I read my first thing about Saint Francis of Assisi, learned about Athanasius and things like that, and Augustine, and then later was a pastor, and eventually got in these debates when the Zanga was around. I mean, so it's like old school. I miss that place actually.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I remember that place.
So like Zanga was around.
Yeah.
And I had all these people, all these Catholics debating me and stuff, and I was, insisting, no, they worship Mary and they're idolaters and all this other stuff, just, kind of run of the mill anti-Catholic apologetic stuff from the Reformed circle. And after about a year and a half, became a Catholic, and then got involved in Latin Mass. But I eventually apostatized. For a short while, I was a sedevacantist, in fact. And my story, I go into great detail about it on an interview on Meaning of Catholic, where you and I first spoke by video like this. And so the thing is that Alphonsus Liguori was always somebody really important to me. In fact, it's my Catholic name. And so I was always big into preparation for death and memento mori. Right? And even as an atheist, I was culturally conservative. I was culturally traditional. So we had very traditional values that never went away. And I remember being on a bridge in England, and we're over the River Thames there, and it's like close to midnight, and the Big Ben's just, the bells are bonging away, and we're talking about what's after life, and my daughter was very, very curious about this, and she just wanted to know. And so we talked and we talked about memento mori, and she said, I don't know what that means. And I said, you may not know how to interpret those words, but you know that better maybe than anyone I've ever known, because she helped me in this way. We did a speech actually to Ferris State University called God and Cancer. And she had real questions and concerns about certain silly things to do with prayer, people praying that God will bless their Taco Bell. You know what I mean? And then gorging.
You don't do that?
Yeah. So but she saw those things, and she saw, she had questions about, miracles, or, why do these things not happen? Why is there suffering? Why do kids get cancer? I mean, that was a real question, just from a deep reflection, with deep reflection on those issues. And that helped me. But I remember after she died, I went back and I watched that video of us speaking, and she would do like 3 minutes, then I would do 3 minutes, then she'd do, and we went back and forth. And it was like listening to two totally different worldviews. One of them was charitable, frustrated and scared, but charitable. And then there was me. And I was so ashamed of the vitriol coming out of me and the hatred. And this is as an atheist watching this. Then I said, I'll never share this video publicly. I never have.
Yeah. And
through that time, started to find myself more and more interested in the church, and going back and wishing that was what we were, and amplifying similarities. I had friends who were Catholic who were talking to me regularly. And it was during the Trump stuff, man. So you're starting to see Trump derangement syndrome really in full. I mean, people are bird doggers everywhere. It's all crazy, and people everybody's calling each other names and stuff.
Right.
And so here I am, an unbeliever, an atheist, an activist, and a Trump supporter with a MAGA hat. And I have to be I was fearful. I mean, I was in rooms where people were privately talking about, this guy got hit in the face with a big brick or whatever, broke his nose. Well, that's what you get for being a Trump supporter. And I'm listening in big groups of people. I'm hearing this, and they don't know about me.
Right.
And I mean, it was terrifying. And that was all going on all at the same time. And we started separating ourselves from that. Eventually, lost my job at a radio station because of my support for Donald Trump. They found out I voted for him. And they said that I did not fit at that station anymore.
True.
Yeah, oh, it was definitely.
I'm sure they were right.
Yeah, they were totally right. One of the few things they were right about.
Yeah.
And then the board, I had, right before Charlottesville, I posted a tweet from Drudge Report talking about, it was the College Fix link, talking about a class, I think at Stanford, about abolishing whiteness. And it's a debate class and stuff. And I shared some tweet about, white students have the right to defend their cultures from false accusations, because it's a debate class with students. And it was saying, that they need to listen and absorb, that whole kind of thing. And so I shared that. And 24 hours later, I come back on Twitter, and Charlottesville had happened. And this atheist commie dude, Dan Errol from over at Pathos, he shared it, my link, and said, "Does this include running into people with cars?" Well, that got the attention of about a bazillion people. And then I got removed from the board of Center for Inquiry, Michigan, without appeal. I wasn't even part of the meeting. It was just, Jeremiah is a racist. And I'm like, I'm the only guy in the organization that's in an interracial marriage, bro. Like, I'm the only guy who lives in a part of town where it's a mixed group, and I'm a coach of a team with most people who are black. But none of it mattered, right? It doesn't work with that, because you just don't say the right credo. And
right.
So on the diversicrat, tolerance tyrant stuff. And so you see these little things. So on the one hand, there's a negative dynamic to it where things are chipping away. And on the other hand, there's a positive dynamic where things at the same time are being amplified naturally in our home, where we're even beginning to watch things like Little House on the Prairie, right? And McGee and Me. I know it sounds weird, right? I don't know.
Yeah, we were talking about it on Meaning of Kath. Yeah.
Yeah. So McGee and Me, and the Buttercream Gang, and Rigoletto, Feature Family for Films. So these were things that started to get involved. And then I made one last step, and that was I read all of Samantha's stuff, and I read all of my own. I went back into all of my diaries and started reading it and seeing a reflection of what I was and how far I've gone, and started going on walks with my dog by myself and fleshing it out, talking out loud to my dog, man, like my dog could talk back. I have a St. Bernard. And I probably looked like a crazy person. I probably was, actually. I was going through a lot. And but all of that stuff led me to a place where I had to face the music. And I realized that as an unbeliever, that I had this kind, if it was an iceberg, you have two iceberg, or an iceberg. At the very tip of the iceberg is a small number of things that I agree with the atheist community on. And underneath is a whole host of things that I agreed with traditional and conservative religious people on. The problem was that I couldn't find a home anywhere in either one, because I knew if I tried to blend in, there's no way I could do it, man. My wife and kids, my wife is stunningly attractive, and my children are just super adorable and cute. Did different modeling stuff for different organizations, like, Old Orchard juices and stuff. So there's no way we're going to blend in. People are going to figure it out. And so we were in a real bind, and we felt between pressures like what Charles Taylor talks about in Secular Age, where you have cross pressures, and there's this malaise that happens where you're in the middle of it. And I experienced that firsthand.
Yeah. Yeah. So when did you fully come back in? We were talking about this a little earlier.
Yeah. Well, what happened was toward the end, our kids, it really comes down to them. They started asking questions. It started with my daughter. We're playing Legos or something. And she looks at me and she goes, "Hey, Papa, who built the builders?" And I thought, like, of the Lego pieces and stuff. And she goes, "No, of the universe." And I'm thinking, okay, so this is her very simplistic way. She's our youngest one. And so this is her way of asking, how did we get here? And I said, well, that's a tough question, actually. I don't have the answer for that. And then a couple of days later, my son Athanasius, he's in an argument with my wife, and I had to reprimand him. When they got home, I had to reprimand him. And so I'm talking to him, And we get into this thing about, honoring your mother and father. And he goes, well, but why do I have to do that? Like, is it just because you say so? Right? Like, what is it?
It's a fair question for an atheist dad. Like, hey man,
Right?
might makes right. What if I get bigger than you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And he's almost a black belt in Taekwondo now. So I've got real worries. I got to really lift a lot of weights now. So
Without religion, only the you without religion have to. Now you got the force of the Lord on your behalf. That's this is the law. Nothing's understood, right?
And my children are righteous little soldiers. They're awesome. So and my son loves me. But the thing is, so he's asking ultimately, like, well, what's the foundation of morality? Like, what makes is it objective? Is it subjective? Is it relative to you? But he doesn't know those words yet. So I'm like, man, that's kind of a tricky thing. And then a couple days later, Ambrose, that's the final straw, man. Ambrose, he says, Papa, I need you to come upstairs. I want to tell you a secret. So I go upstairs. He's my little mini me, And I go upstairs and he says, close the door. So I close the door and he says, I need to tell you something. And I don't want you to get mad at me. And I said, what is it? And he goes, Papa, I pray. And I'm looking at him. I'm sitting on the edge of his bed and I look at him and I'm like, you pray? He goes, yes, I pray every day. And I said, well, who taught you how to do that? Nobody. And I'm like, so I'm kind of, being a little bit rude. But I said, well, so does God like talk to you and stuff? And he said, and he laughed at me. And he goes, no. He said, it's not. And he had a puppet in his hands, this chef puppet. And he's like, no, it's not like God's talking in my ear or anything, Papa. And then he paused for a second.
He happened to have the puppet handy, or
they were playing puppets outside.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
it was convenient.
It was convenient. It worked perfectly.
Yeah.
So yeah, they play puppets. I have some cool videos of their puppeteering. But he's sitting there and he's playing with his puppet. God doesn't talk to me in my ear, Papa. And he paused and then he said, but I still think it's the right thing to do. And then he gets up and he walks out of the room and leaves me there by myself. And I'm just sitting on his bed, like soaking this in. And I get mad and I say, time out. I'm like, family meeting right now. And we go downstairs and I'm thinking they're like colluding on me, bro. Like I'm thinking that they're talking to somebody. Who's talking to you? And I'm yelling at them and they're all stunned, No, we're not talking to each other. They don't even know that any of the other ones are thinking anything along any of these lines, right? And so that starts it. So they start asking questions. And so my son, Ambrose, he asked me, he goes, so Papa, are we Catholic? And this is a tough one, dude, because, I have Isaac Athanasius, I have Ambrose Lewis, and I have Teresa Avila Lucille. I mean, I'm hosed, bro. You know what I mean? And,
yeah,
and I
wait,
look at,
the timeline's throwing me, and it's probably throwing people who are going to be listening. So you were raised sort of Pentecostal, slid right into Calvinism.
Yeah.
Then you become Catholic, then you become Sedevacantist, then atheist, then Catholic?
Yes.
Did I hit the right order?
Yep, that's the right order.
Okay.
And all this happened, for clarity, all this happened about 1.5 years after Samantha died. So, I mean, it wasn't like it was a sudden thing. It's not like she died and we said, oh, we want to see her again and we're so sad and we just all of a sudden did this. I mean, life kind of went on like normal for a while,
Now, you were Catholic before you had Samantha or after?
Yeah.
Because all your other kids have Catholic names.
Oh, yes. Yeah, we were Catholic all together for about 4.5, 5 years at the time.
So
they're all baptized.
They're all baptized. Okay.
Yep, they're all baptized. Samantha's baptized. Everybody, all
good,
of them.
great.
Well, I'm looking at them like...
I'm trying to come around to it. I'm like, was she baptized? Yeah, okay. Sorry.
Yeah, no, of course. Yeah, she's baptized. And so we, and actually, I'll say this, so she's baptized. And the thing is that I had to face the music on this and say, hey, man, or, okay, yeah, you all have Catholic names and you've all been baptized. And they said, well, what is church like? And they wanted to know. So I'm trying to sabotage them a little bit. I'm still not liking this whole thing. So at least not convinced entirely of it. So I start showing them where our family, the kind of denominations that our family and friends go to their churches. And they were not impressed by any of it.
You should have just showed them most Novus Ordos, 99% of them, if you wanted to mock,
Yeah. Well, and that's the weird thing, man, because they didn't like any of the Protestant stuff. They felt like he looked like a businessman up there. And he's like he kind of looks like a banker or a businessman talking to people. And so then they said, where does your Aunt where does Aunt Curly go? And she's Eastern Orthodox, my sister, my younger sister. And so I showed them, and it was the first time of all the different denominations we showed them, it was the first time that they were mesmerized.
Yeah.
They didn't laugh, and they watched it for like 5 minutes. And that's when my son said, "Papa, are we Catholic?" It was at that point. And so he said, "Well, what does it look like?" So we showed them. And because we came from the Latin Mass, it was just the first thing I thought of, it's a God thing, I feel, because you would think my cynical side would go, "Oh, well, I'm going to just show them Novus Ordo stuff. I'm going to find the Dorito chip guy,
Grover shirted, whatever minister you're passing out.
Right. And so, but I showed him, and then he said, "Can we go to church with my godmother?" Now, this is before Christmas. This is, I think, probably late October when this is all going on. And the godmother, my son's godmother, she would send every single Christmas, she would send a nativity piece. So we put up the nativity every year. I even put Jesus in the manger on Christmas Eve, even as an unbeliever. And I went every year of my life, except for one.
You were a bad atheist, bro. You're bad at practicing atheism.
All my friends were confused by it, and they're like, "We don't understand." I said, "It's personal. It's a personal thing." And I would either go to a mass or a divine liturgy every Christmas Eve. And my daughter went with me, Samantha. Her and Teresa both went the last Christmas that Samantha was alive. And she asked to go. She said she wanted to go. And as she was leaving, she kissed the icon as she was leaving. And we got home, and she asked if she could put baby Jesus in the manger. And when she's going upstairs, she said, "Happy birthday to baby Jesus." So, that kind of stuff happened in our home. But I said, "Yeah, we can go," because they're all, "Yeah, we want to go. So I'm like, "Oh, no, I don't know about this, man." And I'm thinking I'm going to get out of it, because the godmother, last I knew, lived in Kalamazoo, which is like an hour and 15 minutes away from our home in Grand Rapids. And my wife, Angela, she's like, "Jeremiah, they live in Grand Rapids now. They go to church here." And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, no. So Christmas Eve comes, and we go into this church. And there's a story about it that I won't relay here. I'll save it for the book. But pretty powerful, actually, that ties in even with the very first chapter of the book. But then I walk in the church, and we're kneeling there, and I've got this chaplet, because I couldn't find a rosary, and I was like, identifying with anything that I used to have. And I found this little chaplet. I didn't know where it came from, though. And I get there, and kind of looking around, the place is packed out, Christmas Eve. And then the bells ring, right? Everybody stands up, and there's chanting in the back. And I said, "That's really weird. Like, that's rare, to have a whole Schola type thing up here. What is this?"
Right.
And then as all the altar boys are processing, I realize they're all boys, and they're all traditionally vested. And I'm like, whoa, like, this is really random. And then I smell the incense, and I'm like, that's expensive incense. I'm an incense connoisseur. And I said, "Yeah, this is expensive. Whoever's doing this, man, this is crazy." And then right down the middle comes the priest. And it's the priest that we had before we apostatized. And that priest was in Kalamazoo. So, I mean, all these years later, we have no idea that this is going to happen.
He's 100 miles away. You thought you're going to get off scot-free, and you see the priest, who's not an unknown priest, because I know who it is,
right,
from 100 miles away. What a hell of a thing.
Yeah. And so after it was over, I went to the godmother, and I talked to the priest as well. I'll save that for the book. It's a good one. But the godmother, she asked me, and she was talking to me and stuff, and she was so glad, she's crying and everything. And I asked her, I said, "What's this chaplet? What is this?" And she looked at me kind of like, "Really?" And she goes, "Jeremiah," she said, "I gave that to Samantha." She said, "When we came to visit the hospital, me and this priest." And which is the only time anyone like that from our previous life had done that. And it was unannounced. And she said that it is the little flower chaplet, right? It's the little rosary. It's the beads you do the Gloria, right, on them. And so really powerful and meaningful to her because of an experience with the loss of her son. And that was a very powerful chaplet for her to do, with a great story involved in it. And that she gave it to us because even though we were fallen away, she always thought that our relationship reminded her of Saint Therese and her father. And so she was so moved, and she said, she talked about the promise of Therese to rain down the roses, man. And she said, I believe that you are, and your family, you are a bouquet of roses for me. And after that, I still wasn't sold, but the priest told me, we had a conversation. It was really intimate. And I just thought it might be the end of it. But my kids wanted to go back. And I thought it's because they had chocolate, man. Because Christmas Eve, the priest is passing out candy. So I'm just thinking, oh, yeah, that's what it's about. And I said, there's no more candy. And they said, we don't care. And so we started going. And the final straw was about after a month of doing this, to the Latin Mass, that they finally talked about, why are all those people lined up every week? What's this? And I said, it's communion. My son Athanasius, he goes, can we go up for communion? I said, no, man. I said, you gotta go to catechism first, man, and confession. And he goes, have you done catechism? I said, yes, of course. He said, what about confession? And I said, I'd have to go back and do that. And he goes, well, why don't you do that? And it hit me, man, like a ton of bricks. I mean, I don't know another way to say that. I mean,
I don't have a good answer for you, son.
Yeah, I'm
You're
like,
right.
it's over, dude. I'm toast. I'm so toast at this point. And so went home, and Angela approached me after Mass, and she wanted to talk, and she goes, I think we need to go to confession. And we said yes. And it was crazy because I was proven correct about something, that we couldn't go to church without being noticed, because once we got our confession together and we were ready to do it, our first time in years, I go and I'm trying to keep by myself, and this guy comes up and he's like, Jeremiah Bannister? I said, oh no, like, that's not good, man. And he followed my work for years. He knew, even of going back as far back as my early YouTube days, with apologetics with Calvinists and stuff like that, against Calvinism. And so he followed me even at the Distributist Review, and he knew about Sami's death. And he's like, what are you doing here? And I told him, and I tell this story in a video called My Fear, Love, and Loathing. My Fear, Loathing, and Love of Confession. That's what it is. And I tell the story, and in it, when I said that to him, I broke down, and I kept it in the video. I mean, I just wept to remember that time of, for the first time in all those years, looking at somebody and saying, I have to go to confession.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we've never gone back. So we've never changed. We've kept going to church, and we've been in there ever since.
Yeah, you're home. I mean, so that's 2.5 years ago.
Yeah.
Before Christmas, we're summertime, and that was about 2.5 years ago, right? You're home. You're set. Man, God bless you, dude. I mean, look. Yeah, it's a hell of a story. I think the book. How close are you to finishing?
Well,
Answer me a story.
Yeah, and by the way, that's based on something in the story that the day of her surgery, she asked me if I could, because she wanted to go by the name Teeny Tiny Dancer, right? And I thought it had to do with the song, which she loved the song, but it wasn't the song. It was it was a poem that I had written, or prose, about an experience where she was dancing ballet as a kid. I had to be maybe 4 years old, 5 years old. And she's dancing in a mirror, and I'm kind of looking over my shoulder in my office, watching her, over my shoulder. And just the thoughts, why was she dancing? What did she see in that mirror? And the lessons that you learn. And in fact, if people went back and read that piece, it's the story. I mean, it's almost prophetic in a way, because at the end, it takes children, strike a lightning on a clear day, and a song and a dance that only a child could do, to teach me lessons that I ought to have known and never forgotten, but that I'd chosen to walk away from. But the book itself, I've got about five or six chapters remaining, but we're talking out of 30, right?
Okay.
And so it's been tough, and it's hard to deal with, because it's not strictly biographical. Like, it's I've been influenced in my journalistic career by the works of many different people, Chesterton and others, but also Hunter S. Thompson, and the gonzo style of journalism, where it's fantastical, surreal, always leaving you wondering a little bit. And it's a mix of fact and truth and fiction. So it might not be factual. Some of it might not be factual.
Faction. That's
Faction. Yeah.
yeah.
So I always say it's not entirely factual, but it tells the truth.
Yeah.
And so but it's written in third person, and so it reads like a fiction book. But I don't lie in it. I mean, there's obviously dream sequences that are fantastical, but the themes within them are things that if you were to take the duration of the whole and say, okay, what are themes and ideas and symbols and things that were in your mind over time, and if I put that all together as a composite, that's what it is, or a composite person. So it's not biographical, but it is. It's like a fairy tale in some ways. And it's tragic. It's a heroic tragedy, and I say it's a tragedy because on the one hand, we're in church right now, right? On the other hand, she's not here, and there's no taking that back, and that's something that no matter what happens in the end, that I won't give it all away because it's good, but I'm hoping to have that done within the next month. That's my goal, is to say it's done. I'm even considering, I interviewed the guy from the Bird Box because I have a podcast talking about movie and book reviews and stuff, and called Paleo Cheese. And I interviewed the author from the Bird Box, and he said that when he was writing, he locked himself in a room like a weekend, and he said he just wrote and just got it all done. He was done. I said, man, I need to do that.
Yeah.
But it's going to be finished really soon, and that's when it'll be presented for editing. I'm sure that there's going to be things that an editor would say, hey, can you change this, or this may not play too much into it? Is it essential? And get down eventually to line edit, stuff like that.
Yeah, another American author did that. Who's the Chicagoan? Hemingway. Hemingway did that.
I guess.
Yeah. I think a lot of authors end up doing that just to have a deadline. Well, look, let's get this thing on ice. Let's finish it, and then it sounds good. You're a good raconteur, man, and I don't know how to end a show like this because I've never done a show like this. Even the ones I've done on Abby, I've done probably 3 shows on Abby over the last 3 or 4 months, and so this is sui generis, but I think people need to hear this stuff. I think Catholics are stuck in a kind of intellectual rut where we're used to kind of hearing the same stuff. I mean, conservative, traditional-minded Catholics are in a big rut, to be honest, where they're used to hearing pretty much the same stuff every day. This is how you do. Look, I mean, you go to TLM. I go to TLM when I can. I mean, everyone, we're kind of all talking the same language, but there's more colors than just one color on the palette, right? I mean, this is the painful theophilosophical stuff that you're talking about, and brings out a talented creative type like you brings out some creative stuff that I don't think a lot of Catholics are hearing that they need to hear. You and I were talking about certain priests in your neck of the woods geographically that are daring when it comes to talking about political economy that the Catholics just aren't hearing that much. I'm doing something I call a Catholic MinGov week next week, bringing in some important Catholic minimum government thinkers, 4 days of the week at least. Anyway, so I just think there's a lot of color left on the palette that's no one's using. Catholics on the generally right side of things are almost taking pride in painting monochromatically, and I just think there's a big world out there that's untapped, it's untouched, and you represent one of the many voices that I just think needs to get out there more. And it's not just because it's this touching, heartrending story about your daughter, and like I connected with it. Everyone connects with it, even if they don't have a brain patient daughter the way you did or I do. Everyone connects with it. But I mean, we need to break mostly right-thinking Catholics out of the box, and that's what we're trying to do here on Rules for Retrogrades, among other things. Even you wanting to talk about books, movies, storm the institutions. Let's take them back.
Yes.
I don't know why. I don't know why there's so little drive for it. Some Catholics on the right are resistant to it. I don't think that's the majority voice. I think it's the received position that will be easily rendered obsolete, meaning easily overcome. Because I think people see, wow, there are all these bold, bright, beautiful colors that Catholic means lowercase c and uppercase c. And that's what we try to do here, man, is just, the good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful, the not so beautiful, the compelling, the persuasive. I mean, obviously, I love the life of the mind. I love these Catholic intellectual arguments. But I've interviewed two heavyweight champ boxers, and those are two of my least populated videos. I'm not sure what's going on in the Catholic mind these days in this strange, fifth, sixth decade after Vatican II. Everyone is a scatter. I think of that line in Return of the King, where Aragorn is told that the world of men is scattered, divided, and leaderless, and it's like that's how I see the church. This is what happens when the bishops go functionally apostate. At least is you have the elder brothers fighting and not knowing. It's kind of monochromatic. They're just banging one drum. You got to try some more rhetorical appeals. But you're really good at that. I mean, not just your story here. So I want this to get out. I want your story to get out. I want you to get out more broadly. I just think it's good for the Catholic culture. Do you have any? I don't really know how to close because it's all touching. But you close it. We'll end. This is longer than we normally go.
I was going to say,
Yeah,
I was going to say, man, that I've told you this before, but I'll say it again. Is that's actually one of the things that I admire about you. Beyond the way you are as a husband and a dad, I think you're an awesome family dude. You got a great wife. Really cool, kids and stories that are involved in that I relate to, obviously, in some ways. But also that you aren't this one-trick pony. You talk about things like you're saying with boxers, for example. Like, why wouldn't you do that? Why don't Catholic pundits do that more? You talked about this upcoming week that you've got for minimal government pundits, and you shared on Twitter. I think it's like 4 different people on there, and a lot of the followers, even people who followed your work for a long time, they don't know who those people are.
Right.
And I study politics. That's actually really my thing. I love writing, I love poetry, I love film, the philosophy of film. I love studying worldviews, literary criticism, stuff like that. But I'm a journalist. I went to school for journalism, and I study media theory. And so, these are things that I like. So I read a lot broader, more broadly than a lot of people. And I get in these discussions, and I don't want to dog anybody. I get in these discussions, or I watch a lot of the tratty shows and stuff, and they could be talking about political economy, and they bring up Father Ripperger, right? Like, I love Father Ripperger.
Me too.
Or Father Hardin or something. Not somebody like Mises or Hayek. Why not somebody, Adam Smith, right? Name any of these people, any of these great minds over time, right? And say, why is it that we're limiting ourselves to kind of an echo chamber with this? And so I've always admired that about you, because I never got that from you. I never got the idea that you're a mockingbird, just, all singing to each other, but that you are someone who's stepping outside the box and taking all of the skill set that you've got and the things that you love, and finding that as kind of a holistic view of yourself, and a more Catholic view of in approaching and engaging with a more Catholic view of the world and the life of the mind and vocation. And so I've always admired that about you.
Thanks, man.
And so I'm glad you brought that up, man. I'd love to do other shows, and things like that. That'd be great. And so I'm really honored, dude, to have the opportunity to be on this program, and just to even be getting to know you more. It means a lot to me, and I've been looking forward to this, and this is a really cool time. So I'm honored that you had me on the show, and I hope I'm able to be on again and to talk to people in the meantime. They can email me, and I'll provide the email to you. You can put it in the description or whatever. It's pretty simple. Just jeremiah.bannister@gmail.com.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, yeah, we'll have you on for some politics. You're a formidable politico. You know your stuff. I realized that when we were on Meaning of Catholic together, and so I'd love to bring you back on. I think I think we're really thinking in the same direction. People, it's important at this point for traditional minded Catholics to have someone that's like, hey, I'll be the bad guy, man. I mean, that's where ever since around, I don't know, Easter of this year, I've stepped into those shoes where it's like, dude, I don't care, man. I care about one thing, the truth, which is a man. I'm not claiming the aegis of I'm not claiming the path of someone who's I'm not going far. That doesn't It's dangerous when people say I only care about the truth and they say I'm on a path and I'm going to strange and new places, either from the left or the right. I'm right where I'm at. But I only care about the truth, and it's like wherever it leads me, if it affirms a position I don't like, if it affirms a position I might have already had, doesn't matter. If it challenges either something I like or I don't like, I'm going there. And that's what traditional minded Catholics honestly need right now. Jeremiah is someone that some people that are like, I don't really care. Like as long as like an influence in a certain direction, a more open, a more truly Catholic, lowercase c direction can be um, shown to be what makes what's capital C Catholic the only truth on the earth, and there's nothing more traditional than that. If that has to be a bad guy, then fine. I couldn't care less. I couldn't care less. These people, they can't figure me out. It's like a lot of people first came into contact with me through TNT, and they're like, man, I thought for 6 months you're making fun of 99% of the Novus Ordo Mass. I'm like, well, of course. That doesn't, they assumed something about me based on that. It's like, I said 99 or 99.9. So they can't figure me out, and it's not that I'm trying to keep anyone guessing, and I don't think I think you really think in a similar direction. I'm not trying to keep anyone guessing. It's actually relatively straightforward. It's just a question of go wherever the research, the facts, and the truth lead you, and it's always with the church. It's always with the church. That's the most amazing thing, is the church protects its magisterium even from the bad actors of the last 100 years. That's what I find. The more and more I study it, it's a miracle. The documents of even the bad actors, the bad shepherds of the church over the last 100 years are protected from the authors themselves, which is an amazing thing. That's a whole other show, and I've done several on them already. But we'll have you back on, man. I do like the politics. You know your stuff, and you're a good man. God bless your family. You on in 2.5 days, will be extra in our prayers on Sami's 14th. Was 14th or 16th?
16 to be turned. Yep, 16. And then, last thing I'll say about it is like it's a kind of the Triduum, man. That we have this month is the birthday, and next month is where things started to go downhill, and July is when she died. And in fact, it's doubly sad because not only did she die in July, but she had her funeral on Angela's birthday, my wife's birthday. And there's a really touching story in the book that talks about what we did to make that better, because that will live with my wife forever, man. Yeah. So as her husband, I mean, these months leading up to this, and she'll come on sometime, man. We'll have her. We'll have the ladies with us, man. Yeah. But it was just that time of the year where it's a season for our family, and so we talk about in the book the awesome, charming, beautiful, happy things we did, and very intimate with my wife and I. Right? I'll just say a special dance. It was really a powerful moment at the funeral.
What day in July is that? What day in July is that?
July 21st.
Oh, okay. My wife's birthday is the 20th.
I'm not missing. Oh, yours is the 20th.
Steph's birthday is the 20th, and that was one of the her birthday was very tough in the hospital with Abby after Abby had been born. Different kind of tough. But anyway, I wasn't trying to hijack. I just thought it would be funny. Because Abby was born the 16th. Steph's birthday is the 20th. Steph was in the hospital for the next 29 days after Abby was born. And I remember her birthday that year was a different birthday, but man, a
Yeah.
funeral on the wife's birthday.
That's crazy that they're so close. The birthday, man.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
It is.
and I thought it got me confused for a second, and I got to clarify to my wife. I remember your birthday, baby. I wasn't sure if it was the question was what day Samantha died or what day the funeral was.
Yeah.
So
I
I'm
made you
like
look like a
I'm
bad guy.
calculating in my head when's my wife's birthday. I said,
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
oh no, man.
No,
So
I got you.
yeah, but no, so it's but that's the next 3 months. So I mean, people, please, keep us in your prayers. Keep us in prayers for how we deal with this. Pray for the repose of Samantha's soul. Pray that she'll pray for us. Also, to pray that I'll be strong in completing this book because it's painful. I mean, I weep you saw me cry a little bit on this show. I mean, it's hard. It's painful, heart-wrenching thing. And so when I sit down to type, man, I mean, that's my new guitar, to let the emotions out, to get it out. So please keep me in prayer. And again, feel free to email me anytime. And it's been a great honor to be on the show. And I can't wait to be back.
Sounds great, man. All right, brother. Well, God bless you and your wife. Tell her hi for us. And we'll do one with the wives' perspectives on children's hospitals or something like that sometime soon. And then we'll bring you back on pre-election, something like that. But God bless for today. This is enough for today. It's enough for a week. Everyone, tune in another day and a half. We're staggering shows a little bit because Dave's in transit. He's moving states. And then, of course, Kath Mingov week next week. It should be very good. All right. Peace, everyone out there. God bless.